Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we decode the hidden stories within company filings. And let's just say our next company's latest report involves a rather interesting land deal and some shareholder approval that reads like a corporate thriller. Today we're diving into an amended filing from ABVC BioPharma Inc. This is basically an update or a correction to an earlier report, and it tells us a story about how they are acquiring some land in Taiwan from one of their own directors, a move that definitely requires extra scrutiny. So originally back in February of 2024, ABVC BioPharma announced they were buying some land in Taoyuan City, Taiwan from a director named Shuling Zhang. Now, this wasn't just any land deal, it was what they call a related party transaction, because Jian is a director and married to their chief strategic officer, plus she owned a good chunk of the company's stock, around 8.16%. Fast forward to May of 24, the company's board decided to put that deal on hold. They said it wasn't in the best interest of the company or its shareholders to proceed at that time, but they left the door open to revisit it later. And revisit it they did by the time of their 2025 annual shareholder meeting in June. It was clear they were back at the table renegotiating. The company needed shareholder approval for this land deal because the payment structure involved shares and warrants, which could potentially lead to issuing a lot of new stock, and that has rules to follow. So what was the payment plan? It was a mix of company shares and warrants to buy more shares. Now, the exact number of shares to be issued was a bit up in the air, and if it exceeded a certain threshold of the company's outstanding stock and was at a price below a minimum threshold, they needed that shareholder vote, which they got. Finally, on July 15th of this year, the definitive agreements were signed. This is the official deal, and it includes a separate agreement for the warrants. Let's talk numbers. The company agreed to issue over 2 million shares, roughly 2,035,136 of them. This number was based on the stock's closing price back on the shareholder meeting day and valued the land at about 3.8 million yuan and as. It also includes a warrant allowing Zhang to buy another million shares at 2.58 per share. Now here's a little kicker in the deal. Zhang gets to keep the land if the company voluntarily delists from Nasdaq and doesn't list on another major exchange, or if there's a change in control. Basically, if the company's situation gets dicey, she can take the land back, but she has to return any unexercised warrants and any shares she hasn't sold. There's also an interesting clause that could mean Jian gets even more shares if the company's stock price drops below 1.65 at any point before she can freely sell the shares she's receiving. This sounds like a way to protect her investment if the stock tanks. The warrants themselves are pretty standard. They last for 5 years and can be exercised without cash, meaning she can use existing shares to pay for them. This is often done to conserve cash. There's also this thing called a beneficial ownership limitation. You can't own more than 4.99% of the company's stock after exercising the warrant, unless the company already has a special relationship with the holder that pushes them over that line. Then it can go up to 9.99%. This is to prevent any single shareholder from gaining too much control too quickly. Beyond the land deal and warrants, they also signed a consulting agreement. Jiang will also act as a consultant for the development and maintenance of this land. For these services, she'll receive $1 million paid in company stock. That's 1 million shares of ABVC stock, which will vest over 5 years at a rate of 200,000 shares per year. Now let's look at the ownership impact after this deal. If Zhang exercises all her warrants and receives all her consulting shares, she could own up to an estimated 23.3% of the company's stock. This is a significant stake, and it's important to remember this doesn't account for any of the ownership caps we just discussed. This whole transaction is being done under an exemption from registering the securities with the SEC. This means they're selling to a select few investors, not the general public, and they're saying it wasn't a public offering or a general solicitation. And in the back of this report, they've listed the exhibits, which are the actual documents, like the warrant agreement, the definitive agreement for the land, and the consulting agreement. So what's the big picture here? ABVC BioPharma is acquiring valuable land, which could be a good long-term asset. However, they're doing it by issuing a substantial amount of stock to a related party, not to mention the potential for even more stock issuance through warrants and consulting fees. This could dilute existing shareholders significantly. The deal also has some interesting clauses that protect the seller Jiang in case of company distress or stock price drops. The company needs this land for its operations and growth, but the terms of the acquisition look particularly favourable to the seller, which is common in related party transactions, but still warrants a close look. The fact that they had to get shareholder approval suggests the board recognised the potential dilution and the importance of this transaction to the company's capital structure. Looking at the company's direction, it seems they are trying to expand their asset base through these strategic acquisitions. While the land purchase is a concrete step, their reliance on stock issuance for payment instead of cash might signal cash flow constraints or a strategy to preserve cash for operations. The consulting agreement shows a commitment to leveraging Zhang's expertise, which is good, but again, it's paid in stock. A notable risk here is the potential for significant dilution of current shareholders if all warrants and consulting shares are issued, and consider the potential for even more shares if the stock price falters. The company's stock performance is therefore crucial not just for its market valuation, but for the control and ownership structure of the company itself. In conclusion, ABVC BioPharma is making a significant move to acquire land essential for its business. This filing details a complex related party transaction with an intricate payment structure and protective clauses for the seller. While the land acquisition itself appears strategic, the terms lean heavily in favour of the insider, which is a fitting success of this deal. Alright, that's our breakdown of ABVC BioPharma's latest filing. What's your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.